Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sarah. This is my granny era. Today I want to do the Adventurers Assemble tag. I was tagged by Debs at Rainer Reed Stuff way back in September. It's been on my list, but I haven't got to it until now. But I wanted to sit down and do this tag today. I've even got a brand new mug. I bought this this last week. I don't know, it just reminds me of when I was a kid for some reason. So I'm in my library, I've got my cocoa, like everything's cozy. Let's get going on the tag. This tag was first created by Disquiet and Dragons, and there are 5 questions to this tag. So this looks like a really fun tag. I don't read adventure books. I don't know if I ever have as an adult read an adventure book. Maybe my books are a little boring, but I have taken the prompts and used, characters, whatever, from the books that I have read. So I think this will still be an interesting tag for you guys. So question number 1 says, choose a companion or adventurers who will ensure you eat well on your quest. So the book I chose for this is one that I read several years ago. It's called Miss Eliza's English Kitchen by Annabelle Abbs, and it tells a fictionalized story of a real-life person, Eliza Acton. So I would take Eliza Acton along with me to make sure that we all ate well, because this woman is noted as being the creator of the modern cookbook. So back in the early 1800s, 1830s-ish, 40s, Eliza Acton's family was left impoverished and she needed to go to work, and she wanted to be a poet. She wanted to write poetry and publish poetry and whatever, but it was suggested that she write a cookery book instead. In the story, she's insulted by this idea, but ends up giving it a shot. She tries out all of these recipes, and she actually puts them together in a way that is unique to the time. No one had ever seen this before, apparently. And that is a recipe page with detailed instructions and an ingredient list. So if you've ever had, somebody write out a recipe for you that they know really well, they don't often put down an ingredient list as much as just write out what they do, right? So I start with a pound of this, and I add a teaspoon of this, and and they just kind of, especially if they're saying it to you or just typing it out, it's not often written out, right, as we see in a modern cookbook. And that's how the recipes that she was encountering, and apparently it was the most common way of the day, was just to write them out as I just described. But Eliza Acton put them together in a way that made it more readable, apparently, and understandable by listing out the ingredients that one would need ahead of time and then writing out the detailed description in order and all that, and sort of established what we now have as the modern cookbook. So this is an interesting story. It takes, some fictional lines that maybe or maybe not would have happened, but builds up this whole story around Eliza Acton. So I was very curious after reading this book about her and her cookbook. And the ones I found online were super expensive, though I did find it in a printable version. This is Eliza Acton's Modern Cookery from 1859, published in London, and it's about 700 pages or so. And I printed off the whole thing and put it in this big binder. I've never cooked anything from it. I've actually never really even read anything from this, but I wanted to have it because that's just cool. In addition to an ingredient list and detailed instructions, she introduced the idea of giving actual cooking times and temperatures. She offered the first recipes in English for both Brussels sprouts and spaghetti, things that here in America anyway, we just take as American food. But obviously when you think about it, right, they didn't originate here. One thing that I did find interesting when I was kind of looking up other biographical information on her from other sources was that she got really upset when people started copying her recipes, copying this format, even writing down some of her recipes in their own books and basically, in her mind, plagiarizing what she was doing. Nowadays, most cookbooks do write the recipes out with the ingredients first and then detailed instructions, including cooking times and temperatures. That's kind of a given. But she was very upset about it at first. And what I do find interesting is that recipes are not copyrighted. So if you have a recipe instructions written out, that may be copyrighted, but the actual recipe is not copyrighted. So you can copy anyone's recipe and, make it or sell the recipe as long as you change the wording of the instructions. So there's number one. I would take Eliza Acton along with me, the first modern cookbook writer. All right, the second one is choose a companion or adventurers who will help you win a pub or a tavern quiz. So I was trying to think about somebody who is super smart or who probably knew a whole lot of interesting trivia. And I thought about this guy. This is The Englishman Who Posted Himself. The book is by John Tingy, but it is a story about W. Reginald Bray. In 1898, W. Reginald Bray purchased a copy of the Post Office Guide. So postal service regulations were being sort of, tweaked and refined, and there was a lot going on with the postal service. And so he grabbed a guide and read through the whole thing. And so for some reason, he was very interested in reading through these regulations and studying them. He found out in his studies that one of the smallest creatures that you could send through the mail was a bee, and one of the largest creatures that you could send through the mail was an elephant. He decided to start experimenting with sending things through the mail unpackaged. So he sent a turnip. He sent a hat. He sent a bicycle pump. He sent shirt cuffs. He sent dog biscuits and seaweed and even a rabbit's skull, all unpackaged with the addresses either written on the object or on a label attached to the object. Eventually, he even experimented with sending his dog through the mail and eventually himself. So thus, The Englishman Who Posted Himself. So he basically would pay to have a postal worker escort him to his father's house with a label attached to himself saying where he was going. And it became a funny joke, but it also proved that you can pretty much send anything through the mail as long as it's not super dangerous, I guess. Nowadays, I think they'd probably crate the dog, and I don't think they would accept a human going through the mail. But this wasn't enough for this guy. He went on to establish what is believed to be the world's largest collection of autographs. And the way he did this was through the mail. He would send a postcard of maybe, say you lived in a famous mansion in New York. He would get a postcard of your mansion and send it to you and ask you to fill it out, sign it, and send it back to him. He did this with all kinds of touristy places around the world, mostly in Europe and the United States. He did this with celebrities. He did this with all kinds of famous people, and he had a ton of autographs and postcards from places all over the world sent to him by these people who were willing to play along with his fun experiment. I actually started that experiment myself about a year ago. I will put a video up here for you guys that shows some of the postcards that I received back when I went out and left a ton of postcards all around the south central southwest part of the US on a trip that I took last year. And I have received some of them back, some of them very recently. And I have a second sort of postal bookish experiment in mind. I will talk to you guys about that in a little while after I get the okay from my husband, because it requires spending some money and I should probably run that by him first. All right, number 3. Choose a companion or adventurers who will stay loyal and trustworthy right to the end. And I immediately thought of the mother, father, friends, whoever was keeping the fasting girl secrets. That's got to be the ones. So if you guys are not familiar with a fasting girl, this book tells the story of Molly Fancher and then later goes on to tell the story of other fasting girls of the Victorian era, where basically this girl just went to bed one day and never got out and never ate anything, hardly needed a drink. She just fasted like forever. And it was amazing. And lots of people came to study her and see her, this marvel of science. And how could this possibly be? So when I first read this book, I was in my early 20s and I was super naive. And I was like, wow, how could this possibly be? Anyway, I've read it a couple of times since. Obviously, somebody was feeding this plump and happy child. Clear up until, the woman died in her elderly years and was still known as this fasting Molly Fancher. And then the book goes on to describe other people who did the same thing. Now, obviously, they had someone, sneaking them food and water. Obviously, they had someone taking them to the bathroom and whatever else they needed that they wanted to claim that they didn't actually do because they were somehow on some higher plane of physicality and therefore they didn't need these things that normal humans needed. It's a weird mental illness and sad, right? It's just a waste. I think Molly Fancher went to bed at like age 19 and never really left that room. She gave up an engagement. Some people think that she went into her fasting mode to avoid her engagement, but she gave up a whole life of, everything. Even if you did just give up your engagement and go live your life, like how sad, right? But those people, they could definitely keep a secret. So I think there may have been some money involved. I'm just saying. But they, I guess, would be my companions. I guess they'd make sure that I ate well too, maybe. All right, prompt number 4 says, choose a companion or adventurers who will help you out in a fight. Now this one was hard because I don't read books with like fighting in it. So, but I did end up choosing the animal character of Rolf from The Little White Horse. I just finished this a couple days ago. This is the group read for our children's classic read along for January. You guys can see all the information on that in the Discord. But I finished this a couple of days ago, and one of the characters, Rolf, was a dog, but not really a dog. And later on, you find out he's actually something else. And he was very protective, very intelligent, a little too intelligent for any kind of animal, in my opinion. But he did very well on keeping Mariah and Robin safe and helping them to defeat evil, I guess. Honestly, though, I really don't like dogs or pets in general. So if I was going to go on any kind of quest or just in my daily life, I really would prefer to do it without an animal friend. But if I had to, I guess I would take Rolf along with me. All right, and then the 5th one also is about animals. Choose a companion or adventurers that are not human. And I don't think that I have ever talked to you guys about this series. This is the Cottage Tales of Beatrix Potter series by Susan Wittig Albert. I read these, I think there's 8 in the series, and I read these years ago. And I really loved them. And as I have said before, I am not one who likes to read animal stories. And these are all about the animals. They are the animals that Beatrix Potter encounters and become the inspiration for her stories. But I read this series years ago. They're cozy mysteries, but I think only one of them actually has a murder in it. The rest are like different kinds of mysteries. And I think that's one thing that appealed to me when I did read these back in the day. And then also just, it was about, England and Beatrix Potter and whatever. So you get the storyline of young Beatrix Potter up through her courtship and eventual marriage and all these things. And then also the story about her career, like the, storyline that takes, the timeline, I guess, for her career as a, author, illustrator, artist. And then you have this separate storyline that is the animals. And so she's getting to know these animals in her little community that she lives in. And they become the inspiration for her stories. It's a super fun series. I ended up buying the whole collection in hardback because my oldest daughter wanted to read these. They're definitely her type of read too. And so I probably will go back through these one of these days. But I have to say that this is probably the only time I remember enjoying like animal-led stories where they're actually, the main characters and all that. So maybe I just need to read more stuff, but they are really good stories. So that's it for the Adventurers Assemble tag. I'm going to go around and tag some channels that I don't normally listen to, like some new to me channels. It's been a while since I've done that, and that's how you meet new friends, right? So hope everybody who's interested will do this tag, even if I didn't tag you. And otherwise, have a great day. I will see you soon. Bye-bye.